Fellow Ghanaians, good morning. So in the middle of the recent transportation crisis that left thousands of commuters stranded, from dawn to dusk, waiting endlessly for vehicles that never came, there was one revelation that seemed to have quietly slipped past the public conversation, but deserves to sit right at the center of it. And that is the disclosure by the management of the Metro Mass Transit that under the previous administration, hundreds of state-owned buses were sold off for ridiculous sums of about 2,500 cedis each. A figure that is so laughable that it would be insulting if it were not so tragic. Because even if those buses were completely unserviceable, even if they could never return to the road, the scrap value alone should have fetched far more than that. And this is where the deeper rot reveals itself. Because the issue is not just that the buses were sold cheaply. It is that we do not appear to have any serious, transparent national system for disposing of public assets in a way that protects the taxpayers, maximizes value, and prevents insider dealing. And so what should be a routine administrative process then becomes a quiet channel through which state property disappears into private hands. Fellow Ghanaians, when the state no longer needs buses, vehicles, computers, furniture, machinery, or equipment of any kind, the process should be simple, it should be visible, and it should be transparent with a single publicly accessible platform where all surplus government assets will be listed, where the condition of each item will be clearly stated, where anyone can see what is up for sale and anyone can bid, and where the prices are determined by open competition other than some whispered arrangements and backroom favors. Instead, fellow Ghanaians, we have normalized in this country a culture of quiet disposal, silent auction, selective information, and after-the-fact explanations that never quite add up. And every time the story breaks, the numbers are so absurd that they insult the intelligence of the average Ghanaian. Because how does a whole bus, even a broken one, go for a price of a second-hand refrigerator? And who exactly decided that that was acceptable? This is not an isolated problem, fellow Ghanaians, and anyone who has paid attention knows that. Because the same pattern plays out at the ports, where containers, vehicles, and seized goods are mysteriously changing hands, where auctions are poorly advertised, or not advertised at all, where records are difficult to access, and where the same familiar names always seem to emerge as the beneficiaries, while the state bleeds out millions, and the public is then told to move on. What makes this even more painful is that the solution is neither complex nor expensive, because elsewhere in the world, this problem has already been solved, and solved well through simple digital transparency, where governments list surplus items on public auction platforms, where every bid becomes visible, every sale recorded, and everyone can see how much was realized and who bought what. In the US, there is a single platform where federal and state agencies will list everything from office chairs to buses to heavy equipment, and is open to everyone with an internet connection. The prices are then determined by demand, not connections. But even here in Ghana, in fact, the US Embassy, they operate their own public auction system that is open, clear, and free from drama. It proves beyond any doubt that transparency is not some foreign concept that we cannot implement. But in our own public institutions, we still allow government vehicles to rot in compounds for years until they are reduced to scrap or worse off, quietly disposed at prices that defy logic. And then we turn around and complain that the state has no money, that transport systems are collapsing, that agencies cannot function, that the public must then tighten its belt, pay more, to buy more, to leave them in the same situation. What makes this particularly galling is that this waste happens alongside genuine hardship. Because while buses are being sold for cheap, for peanuts, ordinary Ghanaians are spending hours stranded at bus stops, paying extortionate fares, squeezing into unsafe vehicles and absorbing the daily humiliation of a public transport system that simply does not work. And then we discover that the very assets that could have been refurbished, reallocated, or sold properly to raise funds were cheaply given away quietly. It's not failure of policy. This is a failure of seriousness. a failure of systems and a failure of the respect for the public purse. And what is most frustrating about this is that it continues not because we lack ideas, but because we lack the urgency and the accountability. There should be one national portal for government asset disposal that is backed by law, enforced by audits, and then open to the public, where every ministry, department, and agency must list what it no longer needs, where timelines will be clear, where prices will be driven by competition, and not where officials can claim ignorance or hide behind procedure. And until we do this, we will keep bleeding quietly while pretending to be surprised by the losses that we continue to make. What this episode should reveal, fellow Ghanaians, more than anything, is how we casually treat state property, as though it belongs to nobody and therefore to anybody who can get close enough to take it. Fellow Ghanaians, that is not how you treat state property. And this mindset is at the heart of so many of the challenges that we continue to face, from poor infrastructure to weak services to constant financial leakages. Fellow Ghanaians, a country that cannot even sell its old buses properly is a country that will struggle to manage the meager resources and when the bigger ones come. And if we cannot bring transparency to something as basic as auctions, then all our talk of efficiency, reform, value for money remains just that, talk. This is not politics, fellow Ghanaians. It is common sense. And until we start to see and demand systems that are open, traceable, and accountable, we'll continue to bleed out money in small, silent ways that add up to our national failure. One cheaply bus sold at a time. And so, fellow Ghanaians, the lesson here is simple. Whether we will learn it, it's up to us. It's uncomfortable. That national systems must work, and the national decline does not always come in dramatic collapses or sometimes headline-grabbing scandals, but often through some of these quiet, routine negligence, through the small decisions that nobody interrogates, the processes nobody is paying attention to. That is how the state continues to bleed out. It is welcome that the Metro Mass Transit says it's going to investigate through Yoko how these buses were disposed of. It should also serve as a national lesson for all of us. I know that tomorrow or next year we'll come here, we'll put the same news. But that is not how you build a country. You build a country by changing some of these things one day at a time. Good morning, fellow Ghanaians.